Good morning and welcome to your partner in Success Radio. I'm your host, Denise Griffitts. And as always, I am honored that you're spending part of your day with us. And joining me today are the team behind the Personalities Remixed approach, Lewis Sr., Mark Wilkinson, and Paul Grant. They work across industries from classrooms to boardrooms, helping people strengthen communication, leadership, productivity, safety, and teamwork by understanding personality at a much deeper level. And before we continue, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Frederick Fisher. He is the president of Fisher Consulting Group, Incorporated. And Frederick is a nationally recognized attorney specializing in legal malpractice defense and professional ethics. He helps firms and professionals navigate compliance, and responsibility with clarity and precision. And here's why that matters with today's conversation. Many professional issues don't begin with bad intent. They begin with miscommunication, unclear expectations, or reactive decisions. So understanding behavior and improving communication, it's not just good leadership, it's smart risk management. Frederick, thank you for supporting your partner in Success Radio. We love having you as a sponsor. And now back to our conversation. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I've got your book. I'm so glad to have all of you here, and thank you for sending me this. It's a book. I told you in the green room, I keep picking it up and finding new stuff every single time. And the book is, of course, Personalities Remixed. I've read it, and it's sitting right here in front of me as we speak. But before we get started, I'd like to have each of you introduce yourselves individually, and please tell our audience who you are, what you do, and the focus of your work.
Lewis, I think you should kick us off.
Okay, well, Denise, first of all, thank you very much for having us. It's a really unique opportunity for us to share our personality diversity technology, and looking forward to the conversation. My name is Lewis Sr. As people will learn over time about the E-colors, my E-colors are predominantly yellow-red. I tend to be quite optimistic. And when I say something is going to happen, it's going to happen. May take a few lifetimes, but it's going to happen. I have the privilege of being the CEO of Equilibria, an organization that we co-founded back in 2004. And that was really the beginning of when we were able to bring what we now call E-colors to the world. I just want to point out that actually one of my co-founders and co-authors, Paul Grant, he may not be able to make this call, unfortunately, but if he can, I'm sure he'll join us later on. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Lewis. Hi, Denise. My name is Mark Wilkinson. I'm speaking to you from London in the UK. I am a director of Equilibria. I'm also the author of all four of the Remixed series books, which Personalities Remixed is a big part of. I've known and been around Lewis Sr. for probably 15 years now, or getting up to 15 years. Lewis and I have become firm friends, business partners, coaches, working together, and now I'm grateful to be a director of the company. I also run my own coaching company, Life Remixed Coaching, and my own consultancy, Hillmont Associates, where we work globally alongside Equilibria with multiple clients. And it's a privilege to do what I do. It's been many years in the making, but to create a life that has the ability for me to do what I like, when I like, with who I like, was always the dream. And that is exactly what I do minute by minute nowadays. And it's something I'm hugely grateful for.
And you mentioned the Remix series. I've got, when I opened up the box you guys sent from over the pond, it didn't come from here. I'm in the United States, y'all are not. In fact, I'll get you to tell us where you are, but I have Money Remixed and I have Life Remixed, and there's one I'm missing. Which one is it?
So I've just released Love Remixed, which is a new book that came out just before Christmas. And of course, with Valentine's Day just passed, it's very topical right now. So I get a lot of coaching clients that come to me because they want to succeed. Personality diversity, I think we're going to talk about today, is very much part of that, being able to succeed. But also understanding what love really is something that people really need to get and accept so that they can be successful. So that's why I wrote Love Remixed now.
Well, I'd like to read that one. I'll be sure to grab that one. Tell us where you both are from right now.
Lewis?
I actually am English, as you may have picked up on my accent, but I live in Spain. I've been married to a wonderful Spanish lady for nearly 50 years now, and
Lucky.
which has been a real privilege and a pleasure. I have two phenomenal human beings for children, if you can say children, when they're nearly 40 years oldish. A daughter who is predominantly red yellow, who's actually in Jamaica right now at the carnival. And I have a son, David, who is predominantly blue yellow
Mm.
and is out and about today as well. So I think probably if you like these, well, sorry, I'll tell you what, again, Paul is in Scotland, as we just said before, although he lives in Thailand. And Mark, maybe you just want to share where you are. And then, Denise, I think what might be a good idea, if you like, is let me explain a little bit about what the e-colors are and how it all came about.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in southwest London, actually, in a nice place called Esher that Lewis now knows very well because he walks my dog all around the streets when he comes to stay. But essentially, the beauty of what I love, and when I hand back to Lewis in a moment, is that personality diversity is a global thing. It doesn't matter where you are in the world with any human being. So far, 1.5 million times our questionnaire has been completed. And personality diversity is a common thing in every human being. I think we're in about 20 plus languages, and it's a phenomenal tool. So the global appeal is something that I absolutely love as a yellow red with a big picture kind of mentality. Over to you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Oh, Lewis, you mentioned carnival. It's Mardi Gras here tomorrow. I'm in Louisiana, so
Yeah.
that's a big deal. I'm actually shut down tomorrow, and I've got gumbo getting ready to serve. I don't go to Mardi Gras. I'm not a people person. I don't drink, and if somebody steps on me, I'm probably going to need bail money. But I do, seriously. But I do make my home available for, my friends that are passing through or they're coming from Texas and they can use it as a pit stop, get some gumbo and go right back out there.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's certainly interesting. In fact, I went for a walk here in Spain this morning, and all the kids were out at school doing their carnival thing. So it is something. It's interesting if you draw the
It's
parallel.
global,
Actually, it's
right?
global.
It
It
is. It
it
really.
it, it really is. It does. In fact, I had a call with some people in Brazil this afternoon, and they were kicking off tomorrow with their carnival. So again, well worth understanding the. It takes something like that to bring everybody together, as you well know.
I do. Well, listen, let's get started with e-colors. And I have to tell you, when I opened your book, I read these books 2.5 to 3 times. This one I've read more than that because it's so fascinating. But the very first thing I always do the page flip when it lands. And the first thing I'm looking for my sticky notes here. The very first chapter, I think it was, I just started laughing out loud. I couldn't help it. And basically it says, I'm gonna have to find it, but basically says, "Are we surrounded by idiots?" And I lost my mind, went, "Yes, we are." So there's that. So I fell in love with this book from the very beginning.
Okay, well, let me clarify. There is a book out there, by the way, called "Surrounded by Idiots," and when we formed Equilibria back in 2004, we actually came up with a vision of realizing potential and a core value of people first. Which, as a people person, somebody who's not a people person, that I'm not sure if that lands with you, but what we wanted to do is make sure that everything we do in Equilibria is indeed for the benefit of people in any walk of life. And that's something that we've been very keen to do throughout the years. So we actually talk about surrounded by potential because people have a lot of time a potential which is never really unlocked, for want of a better way of putting it. And we wanted to make sure that by introducing people to what we call our personality diversity technology expressed through the e-colors, it really gives people an opportunity in many, many walks of life. And I think as you begin to understand, as we share with your listeners how it all works, it becomes more and more clear that the better you understand yourself, and then the people around you, the better life tends to play out.
Understood. And you say right away in the book that relationships are a mirror. And I had to stop and think about that, which basically you're saying every relationship reflects our personality. So I guess my question is, how do our relationships show us parts of ourselves that we may not notice?
So that's a great question. And certainly personality styles have a huge impact on that. Um, as an example, what we do when you do the questionnaire on Equilibria's website, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, takes about 10 or 15 minutes. And you pick out words that you are most like and words that you are least like. And we ask people to do it based on their natural tendencies, not their learned behaviors. Um, and when you start to do that, you then get either a free report or a basic report or a premium report. And on those reports, you get, certainly on the basic and the premium, you get a pie chart, which is the percentages that you've shown from your answers in each quadrant of personality, which is yellow socializer, red doer, green thinker, and blue relator. And you all have a percentage. We all have a percentage of these things within us. And so, if I use myself and my wife as an example of this, um, I have 40% yellow, massive socializer, love being amongst people, love chatting, love that kind of interaction with people. And Emma has a 3% yellow. So she very much, possibly in your camp, Denise, around doesn't really want to be around people very much. Although
No, not at all.
she
I
can
like
be,
people just fine for 59 and 3/4 minutes.
she can, she can be around people, but for her it's more of an effort. Whereas she has a very high green thinker percentage of 43%, where I have a 9% green thinker percentage. So actually, where she's very organized and very analytical and does the thinking, the deep thinking, I am almost the polar opposite of that, where I do the socializing and the engaging. But actually, if you look at when we talk about strengths and potential limiters of each individual, one of my potential limiters as a high, optimistic, enthusiastic yellow is that I can be disorganized. And then the mirror of that is I'm married to the most organized, and I'm sure Lewis is laughing right now. I'm married to the most organized green analytical thinker in my wife. So actually, there is a potential for us to clash on that. But once we understood our e-colors, it's actually an opportunity to appreciate each other, where she has strengths, I have potential limiters, and vice versa. And once you start to see it and you have it laid out in front of you, it just makes life well, it's the fast track to positive communication. And dare I say it, 13 years together now. So I think it's an important understanding.
It sounds like it. Lewis, what are your colors?
My e-colors are predominantly yellow-red, and my wife is predominantly blue-green. So she tends to be very, very steady, likes to think things through, does not like to do a great deal of socializing unless she's around people she knows really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And building on what Mark was saying, let me take it back a little bit into the kind of history, because we, as Equilibria, we did not invent personality styles. Personality styles have been around for thousands of years. They say that, I think the Chinese are given first credit about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. They recognized there were 4 basic personality styles, and they classed them as earth, wind, fire, and water. Through the age, people have looked at it in different ways, from Hippocrates, Carl Jung in the 1920s, all the way through until what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about today. One of the things that we wanted to do was make the e-colors very, very accessible. If you've obviously had a good look at the book, and even if you look at all the way through the book, there's over 70 different people from all walks of life who have been, given input into how the e-colors are related to them. And at the front of the book, in the forwards, you've got everything from the vice chairman of Chevron all the way down to a young lady who was an e-colors champion at the age of 7 and has taken that throughout her life. So we wanted to provide a tool that was both understandable. Some people call it sticky, because once you know your e-colors, you kind of never forget them. And also, it's very, very memorable. You'll find most people who, once they know their e-colors, they're never, ever going to forget them. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
beauties, I think, that we continually see, I've literally, it's already 7:00 in the evening here. So to give you an idea, I've had several coaching calls with people today. First one was in Saudi Arabia. Second one was in Brazil. The next one was in the States, actually, earlier on. One of the first things each one of those people did was talk about their e-colors and how that's impacted their lives.
Mm-hmm. And
You there, Denise?
oh, I'm sorry. We've been having trouble with Zoom all day long. What I started to ask you, or I started to comment, what I want to know is, can your e-colors change with time? Because, I mean, we all grow, we evolve, or we devolve. It just depends on where we're at. But do those change, or are they kind of written in stone?
Well, they can absolutely change. My e-colors have changed from yellow blue to yellow red just by a couple of percent shift. Um, Through coaching, through development, yeah, we all change, don't we? Through age, we all grow, and it's that self-awareness piece of understanding, where we are on that journey. But it's one thing to understand that, anecdotally, if you like. It's another thing entirely to have a report written out in front of you once you've done a short questionnaire about where your personality is showing up. I would suggest that if someone has a very, very strong top e color like I do at 40% of yellow, it's unlikely that's going to shift into any of the other colors, particularly over time. I think that's pretty much where I am. But my other e-color percentages have definitely shifted throughout the years, and it's an ongoing journey. And with that, we also talk about personal intervention. We call that the pause and the play buttons that we introduce as a coaching tool. And Lewis, perhaps you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so we realized a few years ago that, it's great to understand yourself, but then what do you do with it? And a few years ago, we actually came up with the idea of, if we were to able to provide people a useful little tool, a mechanism, if you like, for realizing when is it better to say something or do something, or not say something or not do something. And we introduced what we call a pause and play button. So we actually have wristbands that people have in the various colors that represent their top colors. So the wristband itself, mine would be solid yellow, for example. I've got one on right now. And then the writing, which says, live with intention, because everything that we do through the lens of intentionality. And then there's literally a pause and a play button embedded on the wristband. And the idea is, whenever you are about to do something, like I say, or say something, that maybe would be a good idea to pause on it for a moment and think it through rather than just dive in. And then for those people who may be a little bit reticent to speak up or don't like to put themselves out there, typically what we would identify tend to be more blue, green, green, blue. Then the play button becomes really important for them to be able to say something or do something rather than miss the moment.
Well, that makes sense. And I had to learn, as I mentioned, I am a highly committed introvert, but I'm not shy and I don't have any filters that I've ever been able to find. So I do have to be careful. I have to pause and just take a breath, if nothing else, four breaths in, four breaths out, to just stop myself from putting my foot in my mouth.
So I've met someone, trained a person that comes to mind very, very quickly, in his 60s, who was coming towards the end of his career, but still very much in the workplace. And we introduced the idea of a pause button to him, and he was like, first thing he said was, "Where were you when I was 20?"
Right.
But the next thing he said was, um, the idea that I have a pause button is actually, almost revolutionary to me, because he'd never even considered it. And I think that goes back to something we were saying earlier about, isn't it interesting that some of us can go through our entire lives without necessarily really understanding how we show up or how we're communicating with other people. I mean, the e-colors taught me, first off, it's good to be me. And then they taught me I need to understand how to communicate with all these other, as it stands in our world, 11 other personality combinations, top color, secondary color, and as an example, my wife's green and blue, I'm yellow and red. That is a potential recipe for disaster or an absolute positive appreciation society. So luckily we're in the second one, but the e-colors helped us and accelerated that.
And that does make sense to me. I suspect I'm not yellow. I'm sure there's some in there because I do have empathy and I do like to speak with people. That's why I have a podcast. I get to meet people from all over the world. But I suspect I'm very strong in green and blue.
Yeah, I
I'm
wouldn't.
going to go take the test.
There's a couple of things there. One, ethically, we do not guess, as in we would not guess your e-colors, because that's unethical to us. Ultimately, you find out yourself via your own questionnaire. There are certain indicators that people give, and when we were exchanging emails a little bit earlier, when we were trying to work out our IT gremlins, I said to you, don't dwell on it.
You
And one of
did,
the,
thank
and, one-
you. And I
and,
immediately stepped back. I took a pause and stepped back.
one of the things that anyone with a higher blue percentage, a higher empathy relator blue percentage, is that you can dwell on things that are outside of your control for elongated periods of time that perhaps might not actually help you realize your potential. Sometimes that can be years, right? As well, it could be a few minutes, it could be years, but essentially, it's just helping people be self-aware of that, and then give them coaching tools and strategies to be able to grow.
Well, pausing definitely creates better choices. I learned that over time. I mean, I used to just say whatever I felt like saying because I was young and arrogant and stupid, and I got by with it. But then there's always going to come a day where you don't get by with it, so you might
Well,
as well get in front of it.
what I did was I went around the world being Mark for 20 plus years as an adult, from sort of 20 to 40 almost, and wondering why I was too much for a lot of people, and I never understood it. I was like, why is my message not landing? Because I just want to help. I'm well intentioned. I don't. And why are these people sort of switching off from me? Some of them. And then I got my first e-colors yellow blue report, and it just all the light bulbs went off, and I just went, oh, okay, now I see it. And I'm still very high yellow red like Lewis, but I do hopefully manage those self and potential limiters, and not overplay my strengths. Hopefully.
Well, doing the work you do, I don't know how you can avoid, you know, making mistakes that you used to make. I think you're very listening to you and reading these books. I think you're very aware well of what you're doing
I
now.
think it's an ongoing journey, though. That's my point. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Denise, I think just to pick up on what we were talking about before, just for your information and the information of your listeners, we do not call it a test because, first of all, everybody has a personality, and if you say test, we have to be careful that people don't fall into the trap of there must be a pass and fail. So
Right.
it is literally, it's just what we call the PDI. It's a personality diversity indicator. And I
Indicator, I'm
think,
writing that down. Thank you.
yeah. Well, one of the things I just wanted to point out, actually, because I had a call today with somebody that re-sparked an interest that reality is we have not spent much time on recently. But just to put it in perspective for you, as I think I mentioned when we first talked about doing the podcast a while back, I know you're in New Orleans. I spent many days going backwards and forwards to Leeville because I spent a lot of my time in oil and gas, about 30 years. And one of the first things that we looked at from an e-colors perspective is how people can get hurt. And when we actually started to realize that how people can get hurt relative to their personality, when I say hurt, that's either emotionally or physically. And actually, it could be hurt, maimed, or killed. It's going to be exactly the same reasons. Then it really started to realize how important this work could be. We then looked at things around what makes it difficult to have a safety conversation, why people do and don't follow procedures. But this morning I was asked, why aren't you doing much in healthcare, which is something we always said we would do? And again, I don't know who your listeners are, but I would like to point out one of the beauties as you read Personalities Remixed, there are many examples from many, many walks of life in here. And the reality is when you've got two people or more who are going to need to be able to communicate, then the e-colors is for them, be it at home, be it at work, be it in a social setting. And actually, just thinking about it, as you said before, tomorrow's carnival, all of the effort that goes into particularly Mardi Gras. Well, you're going to have people who've done a lot of planning, but have no interest at all of being the ones out there, are kind of leading the way when it's actually happening. You've got others who just want to make sure everybody's staying safe and everybody's enjoying themselves. You've had other people who definitely want to take the lead. So even in a situation like that, the e-colors are playing out in every moment of every day.
And you're right. And I'm actually a little bit further down the state. I'm closer to the Gulf of America.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
40 miles away from the Gulf. I'm close to Lafayette. But, today's Lundi Gras, isn't it? Or what is today? What is today?
Today's
It's
Monday.
Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Lundi Gras. I'm having one of those moments. Today is Lundi Gras. Tomorrow, of course, is Mardi Gras. Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. But Thursday, the planning for Mardi Gras starts all over again. There's not going to be a pause, I promise you.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you, and I love that you corrected me on indicator. So I wrote that down and put a note under it. How do you use your strengths without letting them limit you? I mean, how do you not scare yourself to death?
Well, I would suggest that the first thing is to know your strengths. So I used to work with a Canadian coach called Bob Proctor, who passed
Oh,
away
yeah.
recently.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I worked with Bob Proctor for a while, with a lot of distance kind of learning and stuff. And Bob Proctor always used to say, and he said in all his books, and whenever I had the opportunity to speak to him a couple of times, he always used to say, know your strengths. And I always remember thinking, well, I don't really know what my strengths are. This is before in colours. And I was always like, well, I know I'm talkative, but is that a strength? Because it seems to annoy some people. I know I'm enthusiastic, but sometimes that can be too much for people. And I'm very optimistic, but sometimes some people don't want to be optimistic, or whatever. So I think that once they were laid out in front of me and my e-colours were very clear, um, and I was introduced to the strengths of a higher yellow. And by the way, not everything we do, none of it is us telling you anything. It's very much our research and the indicators that have been given to us by similar people with personality styles like you. And this is all it's a research project, essentially. It's been pulled together, which is why I love it as well. But, all my strengths were laid out in front of me. And I just realized when I was overplaying them. Now, that's not something I realized in a split second, but through coaching, through development, through my relationship with Bob Proctor and Lewis Senior, I became aware of it and what I was doing and when it was being too much. And the same with the potential limiters. I looked at the potential limiters and thought, yeah, I can see how some things I'm doing might be actually like that or being misconstrued that they are like that. And so the how is very much about the practice. I say often repetition is mastery. The more you repeat something, you could attend one of our training sessions for a day or half a day, and go, oh, that's interesting, and then put it down and never look at it again. That's up to you, each person. But the people that succeed are generally the people. We have a phrase that 90% of top performers are high on emotional intelligence. And e-colors is about being high on emotional intelligence. That's a statistic from Forbes magazine. So the ones that repeat it, go back to it, keep studying it, keep looking at it, keep wanting to grow, turn up for coaching, turn up for development, turn up for training, bring it into their organization. The ones that commit are the ones that learn the best how to intentionally communicate.
Understood. And, you brought up a couple of times that sometimes you're just too much for some people.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, and I'm going to go to pause because I think that's so important. I'm wondering if there came a time while you're doing your work with this book and with the work that you're doing now, did you decide that you needed to do a couple of things? Number one was observe how people were reacting to you and practicing empathy, because sometimes you just have to pause and listen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's something that I'd certainly learned from Lewis, who is senior to me in his surname and his age. But certainly Lewis is a fantastic listener. and it's definitely something that I've practiced and I continually improve upon it. I love to inspire people. That's my thing. That's what the whole Remixed project is about: inspiring people to progress and do something positive with their lives. Um, I think that learning to listen. I mean, Lewis, your mum said something great to you once, didn't she?
Yeah, my mother actually, in her later life, used to spend three nights a week on the suicide line listening to people who were, either about to shoot themselves or jump off a bridge. And she once told me, "I've got it, Louis. It's very, very clear to me. The greatest gift you can give another human being is to listen to them."
I agree with her.
Mm.
Yeah,
Very wise woman.
It doesn't
yeah.
come naturally, but it doesn't come naturally to certain e-color personality styles.
No, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And then again, it depends what you're listening for. So, so again, if we take it back to the e-colors, Denise, the red will listen minimally. In fact, they call it speed listening because as soon as they've got the information they think they need, they're kind of up and up to the races or off to the races. The greens will listen for as much information as they can get. That going back to what Mark was saying about Emma, his wife, they're very, very, very always going to listen for every piece of information she can get because as a perfectionist, the more information you can get, the better the outcome will probably be. The yellows, us, we tend to be more selective listeners. So we'll kind of drift in and out of listening conversations depending, on what's going on at the time, unless we're intentional. And as I mentioned before, intentionality is the key. And the blues will be in natural empathy. They're naturally going to listen to people. Some people will say, they can walk in other people's shoes. So even the way we listen and how we listen is going to be distinct depending on our personality styles.
It's difficult to listen for a lot of people. It's clear when you do listen to them that they're listening just with bated breath because they're going to jump in and say something or correct something or go off on another tangent. They're not really paying attention, and you can tell.
I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were talking about, in certain countries now, they are trying to remove iPhones or social media from children under the age of 16. And in most of the studies they've done so far, where the children are actually not able to use the phone, they are actually listening to each other. They're starting to talk to each other and actually starting to communicate with each other. So if you think about it from a pause and play perspective, probably a really good time to introduce to any organization or country for that matter that is really serious about giving the kids some tools which they have not had, particularly if they were born, anything in around 2000, they need a tool to get them off social media and actually press pause on wanting to get on the screen and play on listening and collaborating and cooperating and communicating with others.
I can't argue with that idea. I see way too many kids young. I mean, they're very young and they're getting younger, but they're going to have neck and back problems, I promise you, because they're bowed over, I don't even know how to say that, but they're looking at their screens all the time. They have no peripheral vision that I can see.
Yep.
It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. They don't speak to each other. They don't make eye contact, and they're going to be in charge of our world. They scare me stupid.
Yeah, that's what they were saying on the podcast this morning. In fact, they reckon that the level of that there are kids taking tests today where the average scores have distinctly gone lower since 2012, which is when things like iPhones were introduced into the world.
Can I just add to this as well?
Yeah, and I was going to ask both of you, reading. Are we finding that people are not reading sufficiently or enough?
So I would suggest that people's attention spans are reducing, and there is, perhaps people are not reading, but they may be listening more to audio and podcasts and audiobooks and things like that as well, which is why we always do an audiobook with each of our books. But going back to the younger people, we've introduced the e-colors to apprenticeship schemes here in the UK. which is young people from 16 to 18 as they come out of school and go into work, and schools with children as young as 7. In fact, in Personalities Remixed, the longest chapter is actually E-Colours for Education, which is a brilliant in-depth chapter, a study and feedback session of taking the E-Colours to young people, because there's a lot of other tools on the market, but they cannot, to the best of my knowledge, be introduced to children as young as 7. The E-Colours is literally, as we said, from the cleaner or the janitor to the CEO, it's also for school children. And we did a session recently, Lewis and I, in Aberdeen, where we did the foundation exercise and broke people into their yellow, red, green and blue and gave them an exercise to do so they could really see personality diversity, how it plays out in amongst their students and their friends, their colleagues and their friends. Very, very, very interesting. And I wish, this is not a regret. I wrote this in Personalities Remixed. You know, I met an E-Colours practitioner when I was 10 years old, and they told me I had all these great strengths as a high yellow, and I had some potential limiters, and so on and so forth. And then I write that actually that's not true. I didn't meet an E-Colours practitioner when I was 10. I was introduced to this when I was 40. And I do think to myself that actually, if I had been introduced to it when I was younger, I may not have made a lot of the mistakes that I did make that I wrote about in my first book, Life Remixed.
I wanted to ask you, using your strengths without letting them limit you, how do strengths become limiters? And how do you maintain balance between those strengths and, let's call them, blind spots? We all have them. I know I had a handshake this morning with one of mine. We're going to talk again later.
Lewis, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think the first thing is to be able to recognize them. One of the things that Mark just referenced there is we do what we call a foundation exercise. And the foundation exercise, depending on the amount of people, we will at least put them into their top color. So all the top color reds together, all the top color yellows, etc., all in their own groups. If we have enough people and enough spread of the different E-color combinations, we'll have red greens together, we'll have red yellows together, and we'll have red blues together, yellow green, yellow red, etc., etc. I remember distinctly the first time I put myself into the yellow red group, and within seconds I started to realize, oh my God, am I like that? Because it was just too much. I mean, it was everybody talking at the same time, nobody listening to anybody else. And so I think the first thing is to recognize your strengths. And the way we look at it is leveraging your strengths and managing your potential limiters. And we all have potential limiters, like, it's this whole yin and yang of the world. So for those of us who are, let's say somebody who's predominantly blue, who maybe one of their strengths is they love order, they love kind of a peaceful approach. One of their limiters may be they don't speak up when they should. I've met top color blues who have not said a word in a school until we give them a wristband where they can sit there and press their play button. So once we understand ourselves, know what comes naturally to us, which are our strengths, and just because they're our strengths, it doesn't mean we are leveraging them to full potential. If we have this strength, then we can really leverage that to make the very best of it. And by the same token, a potential limiter is something that could naturally get us in trouble. Like Mark saying, it could be, where he's a bit exuberant sometimes, where maybe, it doesn't work in that moment. It could be for us all of us who are top color yellow anywhere in the world will tell you, we love to help people. And that can work to our detriment. We can find ourselves jumping into help when it isn't appropriate. So again, when people know their strengths and know the things that they do well and work for them, leverage it, and then use pause and play to actually manage those potential limiters. So for us, as I say, if we're tendencies to jump in, then we need to press pause and hold ourselves back, or at least understand what's going on before we jump in.
That makes sense. And Lewis, I'm going to ask this of you because I have the page open to the book, rather open to page 211, the Cowboy Solution and the E-Colors of Champions. I found that fascinating.
Yes. So we have been very blessed over the years to have worked with organizations that were always willing to do as much as they could for their people. Again, going back to realizing potential. So one of our clients in Houston, he had found a ranch up in near Lake Conroe, where the guy who ran the place, Dr. Don Hudson, who also at the time, he was a cowboy, but also the conductor of the Conroe Orchestra, he was teaching leadership and communication using horses. And our clients were going out there to have these one-day experiences with the horses, and they were all wearing their E-Colors wristbands. Everybody who gets involved with us finishes off having some form of E-Colors identity on them. And so Don Hudson said to the people, what are these colors? Why is everybody wearing the colors? And they said, well, the best person to explain it to you is Louis Sr. So I was in Houston a few weeks later. I took one of our young E-Color champions from one of the schools with me, a young lady called Jennifer Machano, who predominantly blue-yellow. We went out to the ranch and we sat in the pouring rain, actually, in the barn for about 3 hours and explained how the E-Colors work. And Don, being predominantly his E-Colors are predominantly blue-yellow, very kind of people-oriented. He said, I think I've got what you're talking about. Give me a few weeks and come back. So a few weeks later, we went back. I had left him some large wristbands that actually have stud buttons on, so you can put them to any size. And he'd actually got the horses now had their wristbands or fetlock bands, if you like, for those who understand horses. So each horse had been identified by its E-Colors. And that's how he started to do the training. And as you've read it already, I will explain very quickly. One of the amazing things that happened is somebody's mother went to one of the training sessions. Their daughter was at Texas A&M at the university on an athletic scholarship as an equestrian. And what was happening at the university is Texas A&M were winning all of their home events and they were losing all of their away events, because when you are in the away event, you ride the horses of the other university. You don't take the horses across the country. So basically, we taught the girls over a few weeks, about the E-Colors, and then how to recognize the E-Colors of the horse they were about to ride. And 3 years later, they won the NEAC championship.
Which we take full credit for.
But can you imagine the impact of that? So if you are somebody who's a predominantly red, your riding style would tend to be red. But if the horse happens to be blue, then you need to cue it way ahead of time to give it time to think about what it's going to do. And that actually worked very well, Denise. Denise, have we lost you? Denise?
I'm still here, Lewis.
I know. You're fantastic, Mark. You know that.
Thanks, mate. I hope that bit makes the cut. I'm sure she'll come back in a minute.
I'm so sorry. Zoom hates me today, I'm telling you. But yes, Mark, you will make the cut.
So how much of that did you get, Denise?
Every bit of it.
Okay. So I just wanted to add on to that. So what we did for several years, Denise, is anytime I was in Houston, we would have what we call seeing is believing. And on a Sunday, we would invite families, friends, clients, potential clients to come out to the ranch for the day, because once you see the E-Colors play out in the horses, and the horses are not politically correct, they will either respond well if you give it the right instruction, or it won't, depending on their personality. But the amount of people who've come up to me who we've invited who were actually divorced, but both the father and the mother were there because they still got, joint custody of the children. Often they would come up to me and go, you know something, Lewis, we know that your PDI stands for Personality Diversity Indicator, but it should stand for Pre-Divorce Indicator.
Ah.
Because if we knew then what we know now, we'd probably still be together.
Yeah, exactly. I've had similar feedback from a gentleman who said, I'm on my third marriage, and if I'd have known about this when I was in my 20s and 30s, I'd probably still, I probably would have stayed married. And I think that's a very, very, very powerful thing, to talk about a tool that can help people understand themselves like that.
Well, marriage is difficult anyway. I mean, we're different species. Let's just call it what it is. We don't think the same. We don't behave the same. We probably don't understand each other very well. We need all the help we can get.
I wouldn't disagree. I would ask you to read Love Remixed next, and because I do talk about this in certainly in E-Color's language as well in the Love Remix book, because it's very, very, very important. If Lewis has written a fantastic book as well called At the End of the Day many years ago, which actually inspired me to write Life Remixed in the first place. And he wrote about the challenges that he'd had in communication with his daughter, particularly. It was a co-write between Lewis and Laura Senior, Lewis father, Laura daughter, and actually. It was a beautiful thing, when the E-Color started to play out, Lewis, and you started to understand one another.
Yeah, but very much so. And I think for a lot of people, one of the things that we continually see is one thing is because a lot of people will get exposed to the E-Colors at work. Their company will bring us in and they'll learn the E-Colors. But the neat thing is they take it home. And all of a sudden, that's where just like Mark saying, the relationships immediately start to change when siblings understand each other, parents understand the children understand the parents, etc., etc. It's quite remarkable to see.
It is. I could give you multiple stories. I'll just pick one. I had a top color red gentleman who was a coaching client, and there was a bit of confusion in his house, and he didn't understand why. His wife did the PDI, and she came out as top green. Okay, so there's two different colors, and then both his children, one came out as top color blue, one came out as top color yellow, and you could imagine the chaos that when they were all trying to communicate in their own particular way. Once I put the E-Colors in front of them, harmony ensued in a short period of time, because everyone became a bit more understanding, a bit more forgiving, a bit more accepting of each other, which is really powerful.
It is. And Mark, I have a question for you too, because I'm on page 45, and you were talking kind of midway down the page. You said you were wondering what to do with your life when you discovered your E-Colors. And it was another light bulb moment. In your first report, identified your strengths and potential limiters, which we've been talking about. And you've used E-Colors coaching material to help you climb the corporate ladder to a six-figure salary within 3 years.
Yeah,
I think people want to know more about that.
absolutely. I was after my Life Remixed experience, I was unhappy, sick, and broke. I'd been diagnosed with an incurable disease and also bankrupt, so things were not good, especially in my 30s. And I remember thinking, if I can recover from this, I'll write a book about it to help other people. That's the yellow thing, right? Helping. I want to help other people not go through these kind of things, or at least be able to navigate them better. And then I was introduced to the E-Colors by a friend of mine who was working offshore on oil rigs. And he said, I think you'll like this. I've discovered it. I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. And once I understood my strengths and then how to manage them, and more importantly, at that particular time, my potential limiters, because I was very yellow blue, very creative, very musical, very much on that sort of more emotional side of life, definitely brought up by my mother largely. And I didn't understand why I wasn't landing, why I wasn't working well. And as soon as I got my E-Colors and started to understand, and I didn't just read it once and put it down, I read it and reread it and reread it. And within an hour, I'd sent Lewis Senior a message on LinkedIn to say, you and I, we need to meet. And we need to meet right now, because I need to talk to you about this, and I need you to explain more to me. And we did. 3 weeks later or so, we were in Heathrow Airport, and he explained everything to me. And I was like, we need to work together. And that was 15 years ago. But I was trying to fit into what was predominantly a red, green, red work world. And I wasn't fitting in very well. But as soon as I got my E-Colors and I started to really practice my E-Colors with pause and play, and then look around at all the other personality combinations and how I could communicate with them more effectively, I went up the corporate ladder like you wouldn't believe, like a shot. because my personality came through, my sort of engaging yellow came through, but it was also being managed better by myself with the tools at my disposal, and then allowed me to communicate with other people to get the best possible results. And, I doubled my salary twice and ended up well over six figures. And nowadays, I don't even need that salary. I'm very comfortable being a consultant and doing what I'm doing because it's a very positive thing to do, to know thyself. And then the next step is believe in thyself,
And
it's
then get out of your way too.
I say that to all my coaching clients, get out of your own way. Their beliefs can really stop them achieving what they would like to achieve. But again, the personality tends to uh, impregnate our character. We need to understand our personality tendencies, and then we can make changes that will actually lead to lasting change through a long period of coaching and development. But you have to be willing to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to be driven to do it. And we meet people that are very much wanting to do that. And that's for Lewis and I, not putting words into Lewis's mouth, but for Lewis and I, that's the privilege of doing this.
And schools. I mean, we've talked about children a little bit. I'd like to go deeper into that because you have a vision for transforming in education. And listen, our kids, I'm not around children, but I observe them. I'm watching them. And like I say, they worry me these days. They really do. They're glued to their phones. They're not talking to each other. They're not making eye contact. They're almost, I don't even know how to say this without offending half the world, but it's like they're just making themselves smaller and smaller and smaller for safety, maybe. I don't know. I don't know why this is happening, but how can you help educators and children who are just finding themselves?
Well, I will start off, and I'm sure Mark will pick up. But I go back to what he said right at the beginning. The longest chapter in the book, chapter 13, is all about e-colors in education. And one of the reasons for that is because we were very, very privileged to be brought into a school system. Actually, just to put things in perspective for you, the very first school we went into was literally somebody who worked for one of our clients, for Chevron, actually, who was the HSE manager, David Phillips. His wife was an English teacher in Sweeney in Texas. And she asked us, if you can do what you do with Chevron, can you do it with the other English teachers in our little school? Because we don't get on. So we went to this school to bring the e-colors in, and very quickly saw that the students could get as much out of it as could the teachers. And then we got an opportunity to go into a high-risk school in Houston, and from there it just grew and grew. What is really important, I think, to understand, and every school we've been working right now, you see the same thing. You will have some teachers who really latch on to the fact that if they understand their e-colors and the students understand the e-colors, there's a whole other level of appreciation going on for the way they're taught, how they get taught, and how they're going to get on with each other. So I think that the opportunity is there, and hopefully, Denise, even for people who are listening to your podcast, if you've got people in the world of education or supporting the world of education, as you probably might be aware, education is not well funded. And so one of the problems that you have is, how do you get into a school that doesn't have much money but really needs what we're talking about? And what we do, we obviously don't, we won't price our technology to where it's impossible. If a school is interested, we'll find a way to work with them. And just before I forget, I want to mention one thing, because I think it's well worth understanding. So yes, you have the challenge of whatever is happening with social media. Unfortunately, you also have the challenge of drugs and alcohol, which is a major, major problem for kids today. When we worked with one of the school systems in Houston, unbeknown to me, they had actually taken the e-colors into the 9 residential treatment centers around Texas. And the residential treatment centers are for kids between the ages of 9 and 16 who
Oh,
are
God.
recovering alcoholics and drug addicts.
Oh, that is heartbreaking.
Yeah. But I'll tell you one of the things that, as I'm telling you this now, the hairs on the back of my neck are already standing up. We went to see each one of these centers and worked with some of the kids there. And literally 2 weeks before we went into this one center, the teachers had given the kids in there wristbands with their pause and play buttons on. And my daughter and I went to this school on a Saturday afternoon, sat down with some very smart, intelligent kids who were 15, 16 years old, but had fallen in, with the wrong crowd type thing and finished off taking drugs, etc. We got to a break and I said, well, there's some pizza outside, let's take a bit of a break. And three of the girls said, well, just before we go, we'd like to say something to you and Laura. So these three girls hung back and I said, yeah, what's up? Oh, we just wanted to thank you. I said, what do you want to thank me for? Well, we were going to commit suicide last Saturday and decided to press our pause buttons.
Oh,
And
I'm
I
clutching
don't
my
say that for
stomach.
effect. It's just that's the power of what we're talking about. And so if you've got a leader in a school or a leader in an organization or a leader in a company that has social responsibilities, I would ask people to be thinking about that when they go, I don't believe in personality. Well, personality is there if you believe it or not. If you can find a way to help people manage exactly what we're talking about, this is the positive impact that could be made on the world.
I'm rarely speechless, but I don't even know how to respond to that. That is just, I'm glad you were there.
Well, Mark knows very well. I mean, it's something we're seeing it. Thank God we're able to work together quite a bit, and wherever we go, we see the impact. And so, but there's only a few of us, and we need to get more people involved, more people engaged. And if you don't mind, I just want to share something with you, which literally somebody told me on Saturday, but I can't get it out of my head. I am going to be 75 in June. If you imagine a tape measure, let's say a 1 meter, a tape measure that's got 100 centimeters on it, and those 100 centimeters represent 1 centimeter represents 1 year. Okay. So if I'm going to be 75 in June, I can already cut off 75 centimeters because that's gone. That's the past. The average age which a European dies in Spain is 81. I read this the other day, which means if I'm lucky, I've got 6 years, 6 centimeters where I can significantly make a difference. And so, Denise, giving us an opportunity to speak on your podcast today, that's the blessing that we've been given. And Mark and several other people who are younger than me, they will continue to carry the torch. But I just want you to know that's how much it means to us that we're able to share with you, because I'm hanging on to those 6 centimeters for life or death now.
Good for you. And you guys are coming back next Friday too, so we
Yes.
will pick this up, but thank
And-
you.
Absolutely. I just want to add that he needs at least 15 centimeters on that.
I don't even wanna go look at mine. I'm so scared. But you mentioned something earlier, Lewis. You need more people. How can people work with you to learn how to share this? Are you looking for, I don't know if this is the right word, trainers? What are you looking for? How
So we're
can people
looking
help?
Okay, so we're looking for anybody who's interested in helping themselves and others realize their potential. Mark's doing a fantastic job of building a practitioner network. We have practitioners all over the world who take our technology under license. We have people who, in all walks of life, who are getting into that. But obviously, we do a lot of work with companies and organizations as well. Um, and when you think about the amount of people who could benefit from what we're doing, it's just a question of, it's like a stone in a pond. We're spread it as much as we can. And, obviously, through this process and your your program, all being well, will obviously supply our contacts, etc. But if anybody in any way is interested, like I say, in helping themselves and helping others and trying to make the world a bit of a better place, because it's not doing too well right now, then please get in touch with us, get in touch with Mark, get in touch with Info Equilibria, and we will come straight back to you. Mark, do you want to add on? Have I missed anything there?
No, of course, Lewis, you said it brilliantly. From the perspective of reaching out to Lewis or myself, we get back to you very, very quickly. I can vouch for that because 15 years ago, I sent Lewis a message on LinkedIn and he came back to me within a couple of hours. And 15 years later, here I am as a director of the company. Ultimately, if you've got the right attitude, the right drive, and you want to make something good of yourself and then, make sure that impacts other people in a positive way, then we are the people for you. We are your crowd. Come and see us, come and talk to us, come and get involved in events we're doing, either online or in person. Reach out to us, find out about becoming a practitioner with us. We will support your journey because this information is too important not to be shared. It needs to be shared with people. Like you said, Denise, earlier when we were talking, that you'd never realized about e-colors or about personality diversity itself. As Lewis said, it goes back to earth, wind, fire, and water from the ancient Chinese. And all we've done is put colors to it and researched it and researched it and researched it. And we have so many training options based on the research that we've carried out that can help people in all the areas we said of safety, teamwork, leadership, you name it. We can do it. So we want to we want to hear from people. We want to talk to people always.
And that leads me to ask, where can people reach you individually and collectively?
So my email address would be mark@markwilkinsonofficial.com, as well as my website, markwilkinsonofficial.com. And then with the Equilibria banner, it's equilibria.com. You could discover your e-colors there for free. And my email address would be mark.wilkinson@equilibria.com.
Yeah. And I am louis.senior@equilibria.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn under the Intentional CEO. And also you can reach out to info@equilibria and we will be back to you in no time at all.
And you will be here again, because when we had our pre-interview, I remember telling you, there's too much information here. We cannot make 1 hour work. So I'm glad you're coming back again later this week. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for being with us here today, and mark your calendars, they're coming back. So what we explored today is very clear. Relationships reflect who we are, and understanding them helps us grow. Self-awareness gives us the freedom to choose rather than react. That's so important. And e-colors and personal intervention gives us tools, practical tools, to communicate, collaborate, and lead more effectively. Strengths are powerful, but balance is what turns them into sustainable success. And personality, thank goodness, is not fixed. It can be remixed to create better outcomes in work, relationships, and life. And if this conversation resonated with you, I strongly encourage you to connect with my guest today and get the book. It's an amazing book. I will read anything. I'll read the back of a cereal box, but I have read this thing over and over and over again. It's one of those books that I may not even be thinking about it, but I will just automatically reach over and grab it, and it'll open to the page I needed. It's amazing. It's a terrific book. It needs to be part of your life. So thank you for joining us on your Partner in Success Radio today. I look forward to you joining us again with my guests on Friday of this week. And if you enjoyed today's episode, share it, subscribe, and leave a review so we can continue to bringing you those conversations that truly matter. And until next time, remember, understanding yourself may be the most strategic move you will ever make. Mark, Lewis, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
pleasure.
Much appreciated. Thank you. We'll see you on Friday.
You will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.